happened to me, I immediately saw that this woman was not a manager at all. Anyway, we stayed with that woman, but men would always come to her house and go until she told us that she was a prostitute. So that was how I became a prostitute living in South Africa. Working as a prostitute, it made me to meet up with all kind of men, but there was one time that I got booked by a man that was so suspicious in all of his dealings. In those days, we used to charge something like 280 rands for the whole night. So that man came and he booked me up, but what troubled me about him is that he drove around town just looking for a dozen of eggs. Why he kept on driving around town so late at night, it made no sense to me. But since he was the one who was in charge, I had told myself that whenever I was with my clients, I do not comment about their private lives. So he drove around town until he had managed to get one crate of eggs. So ever since I had started this business of me becoming a prostitute, for my own safety, I made sure that when a client picked me up, I always sat at the back of the client's car if it was a private car. So this man, after he had gotten into this other 24-hour grocery shop, I clearly saw him coming out with a crate of eggs, and he placed that crate of eggs at the back seat where I was seated. But by the time that we arrived at that man's house, the eggs had gone missing. When we were sleeping, my brother, that was when I woke up, and when I woke up, I looked at the walls and I saw that there was a snake. This snake was not a very large snake. Maybe it was somewhere around 15 centimeters or so, but the snake, Brother Nashi, was just there on the wall. I don't know, is it possible that a snake can just be there on the wall that is smooth and painted without any grooves on it? When I saw the snake, I then woke up the man of the house, and when I woke him up, I saw that he was not even surprised. This snake that was just there hanging on the walls, it didn't even surprise him. It was like this snake was not even a big deal, because he just said, do not mind that snake because it is not poisonous, and he fell asleep. When the morning came, that man didn't give me the money directly, but he just said, your money is outside. So after I had finished bathing and preparing so that I can leave his house, when I opened the front door, I saw that he had placed the money that he wanted to give me underneath a brick. That is how that man paid me. And he had paid me like 5 times the amount that he was supposed to pay me. Even though I continued working as a prostitute, but I started taking myself to school until my opportunity came. Then that was how I managed to come to Ireland. The stories of this man that I met are quite a lot. So I kept on doing that thing of me being a prostitute, because in that way I was able to take care of my parents and my kids that I had left back home in Zim, and here in South Africa I was now taking myself to college. Then whilst I was studying, I then met a man who then booked me for a week. So when he booked me for a week, it was not like we were going to be together always. No. What he would do was that he would only come and pick me up late at night, but he had said that under no circumstances was I supposed to sleep with another man for that whole week that he had booked me. And he had promised me that he was going to refund me, he was going to pay me each and every single cent for the loss of income that I was supposed to get throughout the week. Because what I would do is that if I didn't have any lecture to attend, I would be standing in the street so as to get some customers. So I then prepared for him to come and pick me up. And when he came to pick me up, we went to his house because I thought that I was going to be with him, offering my services to him. But everything he made me to do for the whole week left a scar that cannot even be healed on my heart. Whenever I think about the things that he made me to do, I feel so much pain and heartbreak in my heart. When I arrived at his house, he told me that he had no feelings for women like me, but he wanted my services for the sake of his sons. When he called his sons, because at the time when we had arrived at his house, his sons, they were upstairs. So he called them, then he said, "Oh, I forgot that they cannot bring themselves downstairs." So I had to follow him upstairs. When we went upstairs, then I found out that the services that I was supposed to offer to his sons, these sons of his, they were all crippled. And these boys, I don't think that they are even allowed to be seen in public by their father, because he seemed to be a very nasty man, even though to me he was trying to be a kind man. But I saw that the way that he looked at his sons and the way that he spoke with his sons, there was this other nastiness in the tone of the voice that he was using. And I wanted to ask them what had happened to them to have such a disability, but the father was always around. Whenever I was offering my services to them, the father would be sitting in the corner of the room. The other one had a crooked back and he could not walk, and the other one was said to be born with a broken spine. And I was supposed to have intercourse with them. This was supposed to happen for 7 days, each and every day, my brother. These boys could not do anything on their own. I was the one who was supposed to undress them and climb on top of them and give them a blowjob. And I had to please them sexually. You know, as a prostitute, you reach a point in your life where you develop such a thick skin whereby you learn to disassociate from your environment. But at that time, it was all too much for me, and each and every time that this man would drop me back at my house in the morning, I would break and start crying. At that time, the idea of taking drugs was so tempting for me, because just across the street were some boys that sold drugs. So those boys that used to sell these drugs, what they used to do is that they would take the weed, then they would mix the weed with this other disinfectant called jig, and they would dry the weed on top of their roof, and then they will sell off the weed that will be mixed with jig to unsuspecting victims, so that their victims can keep on coming back to them to buy more weed. But I don't know how God saved me, because whenever I thought of taking the weed so as to relax my mind, I kept on saying I would try it some other time, until I eventually escaped this world of prostitution. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that I received from one of our dear listeners. Then we tried as much as we could to give you this translation.